In this video, we're going to hopefully help you get started using the relatively new Deneb visual available in Power BI. It's a great visual. It's based on a very powerful and flexible platform, Vega Lite, and which has been around for a while, and which means there's tons of stuff you can learn from or copy and modify that's already out there. And Daniel Marsh-Patrick did a great job making this visual and bringing us the power of Vega Lite into Power BI. So we're just going to do some simple stuff in this video. We'll start by using a template, and that's definitely the best way to start. And then, modify. It's easier to modify than create. Applies here as well. So, you find code online and modify it. We'll talk about the documentation. You'll use it a lot, especially when you get started. And we'll talk about some of the things in the editor that can help you troubleshoot what you're doing and get things working. But like anything, there's no substitute for just trying to do lots of different things and to get a lot of practice. And then I also have another video planned after this one to help you get help, taking your spec, as it's called, from Deneb and getting feedback or advice from probably the Power BI community, but also other places like Stack Overflow. And I'll provide a simple function that helps you provide data with that, but that'll be in the next video. So if you want to be notified of that one or hear about all the other Power BI related things that I talk about, please subscribe to this Hoosier BI channel. All right, so let's go over and do the demo. Certainly you can look through this list here, but this is mostly here for me to remind me of things I want to show. And on the lower left is approximately the video that we'll make. It's not the prettiest. This is really about the functionality and learning how to change things. I made just this little mock data set here, which is enough for us to do a lot of exploration. So a good thing to get started is just to make like a table visual with all the fields you might want and duplicate it. Bring it over somewhere else on the canvas, make it bigger, and then turn it into a Deneb visual. This isn't there by default. To get it, you just click on this ellipsis, get more visuals, go to App Source, search for Deneb, and then download it, and it'll show up right here. So I'm going to convert that to a Deneb visual. Because there are already fields in there, because that was what was in my table, I'll then be able to click on this ellipsis here and go to Edit. And the first thing that'll come up is a prompt, and these are definitely useful to get started. A lot of charts are bar charts, so picking one of these is a good thing. Later on, you may want to start from scratch with an empty one, or as more and more of us are doing this, hopefully there'll be a community of even more templates that are out there that we can share, and you'll be able to download those and then just import them here and get to your visual even quicker. But for this, we'll just do a simple bar chart, and it'll come up with thing we want to map our things. I'm going to choose that product column and then just that quantity column, and then I'm going to hit create. Okay, so we get, very easily with no code so far, I've got this visual here, and so now we're just going to make modifications of this just to help you get more comfortable with the interface here. Definitely, before you get too far into it, it's good, and I've pulled up just a few websites here. So one you definitely should read is the GitHub page by Daniel for the Deneb visual. There's a bunch of pages here. There's a walkthrough of a simple example, and then there's some more info about other topics related to using the visual and taking advantage of all the features. But the site that you'll use a lot is this documentation page. So if you just search Vega Lite and just about any topic, the first link is usually something on this page, and this is a great place if you click on the examples page to see a bunch of charts. Again, these might be good inspiration, and it's certainly a good starting point. And then most of these you click on them, and then the code is right there that you can copy and paste, and usually the visual creates this far for you with the data, brings it in from Power BI. So usually you just add this part here, and off you go. And so if I go back to the documentation side, this is the page you'll use a lot, and we'll look at a few of these here today. So the first thing I want to look at is sorting, and so I'm just going to click on sort here under encoding, and this menu here is laid out very similar to how the JSON is structured in the editor. You won't do transform for basic visuals, but those are really powerful things we'll talk about in future videos. But almost every visual has a mark, and then usually you apply encoding to that mark to know where to position it on your visual. So we already have our visual, and it's got some, everything's got default settings, and by adding more code to your visual, you're basically overriding defaults. So if we look at the sort here, I'm not going to go through this in detail, but just about every page has this kind of a view here. So it tells you where in the code it expects you to provide this information. And so in this case, there's the mark layer, there's the encoding layer, and if you look down here, you'll have one of these for X, one of these for Y, and then there's other things as well. This is where the sort is. So when we go back and we try to affect the sorting, this is where we'll look in our code and try adding some things here. Okay. Later on, I'm going to show you some things with axis properties. And again, if you look here as well, axis is a subset of the X or Y things under encoding. And again, there's all these properties. And so we'll do some things where we affect like the grid, whether or not we have an axis at all, or a title on the axis, those kinds of things. And again, all those are here as well. So, looking here for the name of the property that you can change is key to success. All right, so let's go back over to the visual. And so the first thing I want to do is let's do some sorting. Well, before I do that, this is also something you can do if you wanted it to be, you wanted this to be X and this to be Y, and then you can just hit the play button. This button here is also will apply the changes you made, but it also formats it. So once you do start adding a bunch of code yourself, that's a great feature to allow you to format the code and make it easier to read. Okay, so let's put it back the way we had it. I'll hit the little wrench there, and now we can do some sorting. So when we saw in the documentation, it was underneath the axis properties. So we're going to do stuff on the y-axis here, and so let's just try to do some sorting. By default, this is going to be sorted ascending, and this is a nominal field, so a categorical field here, and so it's sorting alphabetically. So I can just come here and put like descending. And if you notice, these little yellow warning symbols came up, and those can be really helpful. And basically it's saying, hey, I don't recognize, you've done something that I don't expect or isn't consistent with the Vega Lite schema behind the scenes. It doesn't know this word. But once I put that in here, you see that goes away. So it says, okay. And that's always a good sign. When you make all the yellow things go away, it's a very good sign. And it means you're probably on the right track. There are sometimes you'll have yellow things and you'll try to apply it and it'll break it. Other times it'll work. And so it isn't a guarantee that it isn't going to work. Right. So now we've just done sort descending, and we've done that. We can also say you wanted like a Pareto kind of chart. You could say, hey, I want to sort this by the X field, and in this case, that's our quantity field, right? I can just apply that, and we're going to get like a reverse Pareto chart, and I can come here and then I could do negative X. Okay, and then it goes the other way. The other thing you can do is if I add a color, and I don't really need this opacity, this comes in the default. The other thing that's really useful is when you click on something, getting to know JSON, it's all these objects and arrays. And so when you click on one, you'll see the other one highlighted, and these little lines help you as well decide. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete the opacity. Okay. And what you'll see also is this little red X that shows up here is also very helpful. And so that tells you what's currently entered is not valid JSON syntax. And in this case, I deleted that, and I needed to also delete this comma. So once I get rid of that, the red X goes away. And when I hovered over it, it actually told me what line of code needed to be repaired. And now that that's done, I've got this space here. I could delete it, this extra line, but I could also just hit this and it'll take care of it for me. So that's something I use all the time to clean up the code. Now I'm going to go ahead and just add a color to this. And again, this was something you'd see under the encoding section of the documentation. And I'm just going to follow the pattern above for X and Y, but I'm going to sort by the category column, and so you get a nice IntelliSense that pops up there. And I need to tell it that it's a type ordinal column, or sorry, nominal column, just text values, categorical. And then again, my JSON is invalid here. I need to close the curly brackets, and then I'm good again. Okay, so I can format and apply, and now it's applying color to here. So one other, I set that up so I can show you one other thing. You can also sort by another field. So if I do, let's follow the same kind of syntax and just put in the category column here, right? I can actually group stuff by that, and then again by default it would sort it ascending, but I can force that to be descending as well. Okay. The other thing you can do is to also specify, you can sort of hard code the sort. And so in this case, I'm going to delete all that, and now I have square brackets, and square brackets are arrays. You won't use those as much as the curly brackets, but you'll definitely use them. And so say I wanted to specify an order, I could say, hey, I want it to be cars and then trucks first. And I could list out all the values, but if I do this, it'll force it to have cars and trucks first, and then it'll just pick up with the other ones after that, so it won't make them disappear. And so if you really wanted to do this, you would specify all your values here, for example. Okay, so just checking my list. Okay, so that's a bunch on sorting. So now let's talk about and let's put this back to negative X. I want to make it like a Pareto chart. And so let's talk about maybe some stuff on the axis. So we looked at the documentation before, and say, it's obvious that these are products. I don't need to show that product right there. I could go to the axis, and just at this parent level, if I just do, no, it wasn't false. I think it's null. If I just do this, and apply it, I can actually make the axis go away. And so that may be something that you want to do in some visuals, but I don't want to get rid of the whole axis. I only want to affect and it's the title property. And again, you'd see this on the documentation. And I think this is the one. I can make it null and then apply it, and you'll see I get my axis back, but the product label is gone. Right? And again, of course, I could do the same thing on the x-axis, and there's all sorts of other stuff you can do to format things and whatever. The other things you could do are affect the bars and that kind of stuff. So some of those things you can do up at the mark level. And so if I go back to the website here and I look under the mark properties, right, I can see all the things that I can do with marks, and then you can click on the different types of marks that we're doing. So if I click on a bar, so this is a bar chart, I can see examples and things, but then I can also see all the properties that I can do here. Okay, and so I'm going to mess with some of these, like corner radius and that kind of stuff. But again, this is how you'd find it. And again, this part up here tells you where to do it, right? And so it's going to be up here inside the mark part of the code. So if I go back to here, this is one that was automatically added. So this turns tooltips on and off. So you get that very easily with one line of code. But I'm just going to do, I think it was corner radius, and I'm going to set that to 10, right? And my little X went away, and that'll round the bar. And you could say, well, I don't want to do all 4 corners. I just want the top ones. There was a different property there called corner radius end, so I can change it to that one. And I've got back to 90 degrees here, but I've got the radius at the end here. I could also, if I didn't want to color it by category, you could also affect things in the mark. So I'm going to Control X that so I could put it back easily later. But you could also do put a color here, and you could just specify, I want it to be red, right, instead of the default colors. And you could also put hex codes in here. All right, so something else I want to show. So if we look, we've got 2 colors here for these 2 categories, electronics and vehicles. So if I go back to the report and I click on my slicer here, you can see, these are the 2 colors that it's assigned. And if I click on electronics, right, then it gets the default color of blue. But then when I click on vehicles, it also gets the color of blue. And you may say, well, I'd like to be consistent. So when my users use this and they use slicers and things, I always get the same value. So we're going to go ahead and show you how to bind colors to it. And to do this, you can down here in the encoding, you can hard code in some colors. So I'm going to go down here, and this is actually a scale that you need to add here. And then inside another new JSON object within scale, you can provide the domain. And this is going to be an array of values that we could provide. So that'll be square brackets. So I could go, blue and green. And then we've got the red square down there, so we need to fix something. I close the curly brackets and it goes away. I can format the code, and then we've hard coded I had that wrong. It actually needed to be the range here. We'll use the domain in a second. And again, you could put hex codes here, etc. But this would have the same issue because it's saying, hey, whatever the first category is, it'll be blue. And so when we do the slicer again, it would have the same issue. So what you can do is add in the domain. So now will be the right way to use domain. And you can provide the values here to, again, in another array to match up with the values. So we'll start with electronics, and then vehicles, and then it's not liking that, so we need a comma here, and now it's happy. We can apply and format there. And so now when we go back to the report, now it's going to know that whenever it's electronics, I want it to be blue, but whenever it's vehicles, I want it to be green, right? So that's how you can drive some consistency in your report, is with that scale, domain, and range. All right. All right, let's just do some stuff with the grid, and then that'll be it for this video. And so right now you see it's got some defaults, and they're decent here to have these grid lines along the x-axis like this. But if we wanted to affect those, we could. And again, those are properties within the axis. That's on the y, so we're going to do this on the x. So we need to add the axis so that we can get in there and change some things, open curly brackets, and then I could start with, do I even want a grid? And I think this one is expecting a value of false there. And so I could just turn off the grid like this, or I could affect some of the properties, and I could say the grid color, and I think it defaults to like a light gray, and we could just say I want it to be black instead. Okay, and then there's other things we could change as well. There's one called the grid dash, and this actually takes an array, and so you could say, hey, I want to change the length and space between the dashes and the spaces there, so I'm going to do this grid dash, and so you'll see the pattern of the grid change. So again, there's tons of stuff you could do. I could change the opacity of it, the weight of it, the size of it. So again, there's just tons of stuff there, and so definitely getting familiar with the documentation here and just perusing through here to see all the things you can change and then playing with it is a great way to get started. All right, thank you.